Ever since when I first started using social media back in 2018, like with Instagram, I was 24 years old and I was not a big person on Instagram. I just only post this on photos sort of natures and sometimes when I was with my friends and family. And back then, my settings were open for public, so that everyone could be post a comment or something like that. And even to this day, I still do that, but I am more private of myself. And the reason is why I became more private, and it's because of one particular event that actually took place shortly after I started using Instagram. My name is Lauren. I'm currently 29 years old, so this happened 5 years ago, around 2018, like I mentioned. And at this particular event, it scared me for a while. It was some really unexpected event. But like I said, I was just started using Instagram. It was actually my best friend Nicole who actually got me to starting an account on Instagram, and I wasn't really sure like if this was something for me to be using. I already have Facebook, and that was pretty much all we just wanted for social media. And before anyone says no, Nicole didn't force me or pressure me into to get an account on Instagram. She only told me about it, and she already herself had an account and a few followers, and I was actually a bit intrigued. So I was a bit curious, so I made an account. I followed Nicole and she followed me. And of course, my boyfriend Adam, he's currently 30 years old and he was 25 when this happened. So he also had Instagram and he was following me as well. And this actually happened during the summer of 2018. I was pretty much really happy now that after a couple of weeks, I did actually had a few other followers and a lot of comments of my photos of the nature, sunset, or the moon or something like that. It was always a positive responses, comments, and I actually appreciate every single one. But then, in the start of July of 2018, this happened. I was not expecting a follow request from a guy which is the name of George. I later found out that George was 35 years old at the time, was currently 40 years old, but and he only had a few followers and he followed several people like young women, young men for different reasons. And I went to see his profile, and sure, he had a lot of photos of animals, nature, like myself. And so I, at the time, didn't see any red flags or anything, so I accepted it. And it only about maybe a day after, he started messing me and just normal chit chat, just being the saying that George told me that he was a fan of my work or a fan of my photos, that he liked them, and that he hoped to be able to get a better camera and all that. And I actually thanked him for the compliment and told him that I hope that he may be able to get more photos of himself of his inspiration. He asked me what made me to take these photos of different motives. I was like, I wasn't really much any particular motive. I just took photos of something that I liked. Of course, I did have a few photos of me and with Nicole together. And he told me that I looked cute, or like I was beautiful. I thanked him for the compliment, and I left it off that. it sometimes I didn't hear much from him for a couple of days and maybe a week. And be honest, I really didn't mind that. I mean, I had a few friends, and since I had my own full-time job at the Walmart, yeah, at the Walmart, and I was, well, I didn't mind the job. But for some reason, every time when I get home from work, I always had a message from George. He asked me how my day had been, and we just have a normal conversation. So far, he had also only asked me what are my favorite hobbies and what type of movies I like, or what I like to do in my free time. I just mentioned that I like to spend time with my best friend Nicole and with my best boyfriend ever, Adam. When I first mentioned Adam to him, when I had a boyfriend, it was like his tone changed, that he felt a little bit disappointed that I was taken already. But he wasn't mad or anything. He's like, I can see why you have a boyfriend. I mean, don't take me wrong. You're a very beautiful, and beautiful girls like you always had, they like to find someone. And he asked me if I wasn't taken by Adam, would I even consider to be with a guy that was a little bit much older than myself, like almost a decade older? I was a little surprised at the question, but I told him I certainly wouldn't, since 10 years a mark is probably a little bit too for much as my liking. But I wouldn't mind having George as a friend despite being 10 older than myself. And I told him that he's probably will find a beautiful woman in his age or close to that to find to be with. He sent a smiley face and said thanks, and I hoping for that. So I left by that. And and here's another thing. Despite that he had seen photos of me, and I had even no idea how he even looked like. Because despite that he had photos of his channel or of his account, they were only most of animals and landscape like treated forest, lakes, or basically of nature. There were no photos of him or any friends. So even I was curious, but I never actually brought up the topic up to ask him how he looked like, because that wasn't really much my business. But I know that he supposed to have been living a little bit so far from me, since he was supposed to have been living 2 states away from myself. And but later to find out that was a lie. Turned out he lived in the same state, in the same town where I lived. And because only shortly is about after being using Instagram for about maybe as I believe about around 3 weeks in, when I started to notice this guy, a middle-aged guy, started to show up at my work, sometimes just browsing around in the aisles, and even sometimes ask me if I could help him to find a certain item that he was looking for. And he was pretty much, the average Caucasian man, middle age, brown hair, brown eyes, and I wouldn't say that he was unattractive. He's just not my type of person that I would to spend time with. And it wasn't until like then when he asked me after a couple of days when he started showing up, when he asked me if I would like to go out with him, or just to go out and grab something to drink, or. But I told him that I was taken already, and I was flattered, but he was a little bit too old for my taste. And for some reason, he took that as offensive. And he's like, "You ladies never give me a chance." And then he stormed out. I was sitting there, and my manager just walked up to me and asked, "What happened?" I told him, "I don't even know." I only told him that I don't like older men to be dating, and that was the reason why the man just said that and took off. My manager know that I was never the one person to lead them on, and this man returned only a couple of days later, and he apologized for the reaction. It's just he is a little bit insecure that most women don't want to give him a chance. So he gave me a gift, a small plushie of an animal, which were my favorite, of a bear. Even though I wouldn't normally I wouldn't accept any random gift from customers. Well, maybe if I know them quite well. But this was a complete stranger, and he said that his name was Joe. But even though I told him I couldn't accept the gift, but he told me I should take it anyways because he was not taking no for an answer. So I took it, but since I didn't want to upset or make this man freak out again, so I took it and just left it by that. And the man came back a few times more and once again tried to ask me again and again if I was interested to go out with him. Each time I said no, I was already dating with someone else. And the last one of the last times I actually saw him in his store for a while, he screamed so loud, like you can be standing across the building, across the building, and hearing it so loudly. He's like, "How dare you be leading me on to this?" I was like, in my mind, like leading him on. I was professionally against him. I never had any romantic intentions towards him. And my manager heard all this and came up to him and asked what was the matter and what is the trying to ask him to calm down and ask what's the problem. He told my manager that I was leading him on to being seducing him or like that. My manager looked at me and I was like, rolled my eyes, and my manager knows exactly that I never do. And he told the man calmly, almost professionally, "Sir, if you don't have to calm down, you will have to leave the store immediately, or I call security." But the man refused to even listen. He told me, "I will see you soon," and then he turned around and walked out. Me and the manager just talked about this. I was stunned. But I was not even care. I wasn't even worried because this is not the first time I have any creepy men that's do this. Those are not currently happening, but what happened? Even when Adam showed up to pick me up from work, since my car was in the workshop at the time, I told him what happened, and he was a little bit upset, but also worried. He told me to be careful, but I told him not to be worrying. That probably this man probably won't be returning, and the man didn't return to this time. Well, for about maybe a week. But at the time, what about George? Well, I actually had still talked to him occasionally on Instagram, and one message that he actually said, "Wow, you were really beautiful, and I couldn't imagine that you liked the bear plushie that you have." Then it hit me. George was Joe, and that George wasn't even his real name. And first of all, I even asked myself, how in the world did he even manage to find me in this town? If he's also supposed to be living one state away from me? But later to find out, after some digging with help of Nicole, he was living in the same town. And when he did show up at my work at Walmart, I tried to ignore him as much as possible. But he was furious. He screamed that I should talk to him, give him a chance. And I for once, even I shouldn't, but I said, "George," that took him off guard. "Yes, I know who you are. Your name is not even George. You're Joe. And you have been stalking me, so please, get out of here, or I will call the police on you. I will have your ass out of here even before you can even say bye bye, Earth. He was like trying to make an excuse that make some excuses that I was mistaking him from someone else. But I told him, no, you told me one detail that this shouldn't be that you shouldn't have known, and I told him. Then he confessed he was George, but he has fallen in love with me, and that he wants to me to go with him to leave the party store, go with him, and start a family with somewhere else. I was like, there's no way in the world I would do that. But as I was about to turn around, he grabbed my arm and said, "You will go with me, or I will make you do it." I was scared for once. But luckily for one thing he didn't know, I had some martial art training in my youth. So I punched him right in the throat, which made him drop on the ground, gasping for air. And he called me some words, names I probably wouldn't say here. And but during the that all this happened, he stood up and ran out the store. And there was a probably like, oh yeah, now he knows that I know this. But he came back over and over for the next several days. Even on the times that had a day off. I told my boyfriend and Nicole and my manager about this. Everyone was actually very surprised, but very scared. But my manager was actually a bit impressed of how I managed to handle this situation the first time when I punched him in the throat. He was like, "How did you manage to do that?" Well, I told him I took some martial art classes back in high school. He wasn't very impressed. And he told me that I probably should keep up with the training because it one day could be life-saving. And, well, after that, I didn't see George or Joe for almost a week. And he actually hadn't even been on Instagram either for about a week. So I was like, well, at least he's gone from my life now. But boy, was I wrong as so many times. Because one evening after work, as I was by my car, just to butt open, someone tackled me to the ground and grabbed my hair and told me, just be quiet and everything will be done soon. And I actually felt how this person grabbed my arm and dragged me all the way from my car to somewhere else. In the distance, I saw he was dragging me to this old beat up van, like it's classic creeper van. And as I was about to do this, I saw someone in the distance. It was actually the security guard, because he heard this commotion from backstage, behind the store, and he screamed out, "Let her go!" And George, aka Joe, or George, or whatever we call him, turned around and told him to mind his own business. This is between me and her, between me and him. So as he just threw me in the van, closed the door, and hopped in and peeled off. I was scared now. I was now being kidnapped. But luckily for the security guard, he saw the license plate and called for 911, and they had a patrol not that far from the place. So they managed to speed up and track him down, surrounded the car, and, well, long story short, they had him in handcuffs. George, aka Joe, was now arrested. I pressed charges against him and things that I had this information about him. And, well, let's say he ended up in jail for the next 25 years because turned out he was planning to kidnap me and murder me because I rejected him so many times and had punched him. In his mind, I were to deserve. If he could have me, no one could have me. And I later found out this is not his first assault from doing this. Turn out he had quite a long criminal record. He had been doing this kind of thing since he was 18. Burglary, attacking people, harassment, stalking, and in fact, even an attempt of murder on his previous girlfriend. I was stunned. But luckily for this, Lauren, Nicole, when I called her that night at the police station after I gave my statement to police, she was horrified. Luckily for her and Adam showed up and, well, let's say they were both just happy that I was okay. And I also find out that now, even though that he's going to be in jail for 25 years, but I also have a lifetime restraining order against Joe, aka George. I even sent a request to Instagram after this to have them to delete George account and inform them the reason why, which they did eventually, and gladly for that. Even though that Joe is still in jail right now, and that if he even tried to reach out to me, and well, let's say I would be gladly to be sending him back there, but I hope that he remained there for a much longer time, since I'm a bit worried about any potential future victims. But anyways, Joe, stay there forever.